Hi people, this is me Ivan Verstyuk, and now you're watching another episode in my YouTube channel, and this time I'm gonna talk about a very interesting thing, which is Ukraine's post-Soviet capitalism that we used to live upon before the war started on February 24th. Now the Ukrainian economy is pretty much ruined, as well as the country's labor market, so people can't really find any jobs. But to understand the complexity of what's happening, we need to go back to how the Ukrainian political and economical system operated prior to the invasion that Russians did in the morning hours on that horrible February day, which was cold and dark. After the USSR collapsed in 1991, Ukraine inherited most of its industrial assets from the communist times. Ukrainian economy was heavy on steel component of the GDP, then on the energy component, and also on the defensive production, besides the agriculture. It all was organized in a Soviet way, where people and business organizations were getting orders from the government on what they should be doing. All these companies didn't have proper financial accounting, never had balance sheets counted, and the whole economy operated as a set of plans which were predefined by the government for each year or for each number of years, and all the companies had to live with this. However, it didn't work efficiently, and that's how the Ukrainian economy became what we call post-Soviet capitalism. The essence of this regime is the horrible degree of inequality, all kinds of inequality. This is gender inequality, because most of the corporate boards were full with men who were reluctant to let any women to lead the company or a business organization or just live in a business department. Then the income inequality, of course. Most of what you should be expecting from life would come from whether you were born to rich parents or not, and who your parents were, what kind of jobs they had, what kind of social status they had in the Soviet times and then in the independent Ukraine. And then the Ukrainian post-Soviet capitalism learned this and adopted this very basic rule about the short-term profits. You were supposed to make profits daily, and no matter what, you had to do the math of how you become profitable by the end of the day, and such a type of short-termism, it led to all kinds of problems in the economy, because if a certain subset of companies make profits all the time, then there was another subset of companies or consumers who have to admit own losses. Right? When a substantial number of business sectors chase profits on a daily basis, then somebody has to lose in this competition. Somebody has to be on the other side of the profiteering and of the income equation. That's how it worked. And it was really hard to get over this inequality. To me it felt like, there was this list of people who are supposed to be happy and rich under the post-Soviet capitalism. And if you're not in that list, there is no way you can make your life out of poverty. You couldn't afford mortgage, you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't have a good wage at your job, you couldn't afford to go for vacation to a good country like Cyprus or Dominican Republic or Turkey or Egypt. You were just seeing people on Instagram who are more happy than you, posting these great things, how they enjoy stuff in Cyprus or Turkey, and you couldn't afford it. And whenever any of the politicians was calling on that this needs to be changed and we need a better economy, healthier economy, European-style politics and regulation that would resolve all the inequality problems in our country, it wasn't popular. The basic argument was that, come on, we are living in the capitalistic age. That's why we have our own version of capitalism, which is Ukrainian and post-Soviet, and this is the right way. This is what our international partners tell us, that we should have this capitalism, which is not true. I mean, the International Monetary Fund was always saying to Ukraine that, guys, your economy has so many imbalances and so many problems and so much inequality that you got to change this. I mean, it's not sustainable to have 5% of rich people in your country, 95% of poor people. You got to have middle class Ukrainians who would live normal lives and would have the proper life and work balance, and could be able to achieve the goals that they were setting for themselves under current economic circumstances. But it never worked. And the media also played an important role in this. The basic media narrative was supportive of the post-Soviet capitalism. The reason is because media was owned by the oligarchs, who enjoyed the inequality in a way that it made it possible for them to make short-term profits that they were chasing, that they needed. And if the market situation and market fluctuations wouldn't allow to make profits, then the oligarchs would come up with some solution where they would do business in a sector that they can influence through lobbyism and regulation. And again, as a journalist, I was writing about it all this time, all the time, telling Ukrainians that we are not living in a fair economy, and we don't have a level playing field where each of us would be able to make certain accomplishments in this economy and reach some level of personal comfort. It just didn't work this way. And now, as the war is happening, we do understand that we need to reshuffle our economy so it would be a level playing field. So it would create us an infrastructure of opportunities that we need to succeed in life. The rich people, the billionaires who live in Ukraine, they're not happy with the changes and the way we want to change the economy in a democratic way to make it really free market, and now the post-Soviet capitalism. So they're trying to stop us in a way that they think is a smart way, but that's not going to happen, because there was no chance for you, for just a regular person, to succeed in life, which is unacceptable, unsustainable, and can't go on forever. If Ukraine would be rich and powerful economically, Russia wouldn't have invaded in the first place. I keep telling this. I mean, we'd be having healthy economy. There would be no war around. The reasons for this war is also lies with the economy and how we did things in Ukrainian business, what kind of labor market we had, what kind of investment scene we had, what kind of business regulation we had. And these business people who still run the Ukrainian companies, they tell us, guys, you do the labor politics and you try to push Ukraine back to the communist times, where there was no capitalism, no property rights, no private property. This is not so. I mean, there is no option whether you go back or not. We're not going back to the Soviet times or post-Soviet times. We're going to have better, healthier, more modern, more innovative economy that we deserve and want to have and dream about. That's very, very important, because oligarchs, they introduced these rules of inequality, and all the Ukrainians were put in several basic categories, and some were allowed to succeed in life, and some weren't allowed to succeed in life. The government for many years was too weak to tell anything to the oligarchs, to tell them that they're doing things wrong. Now, once I had a conversation with Neil Ferguson, who is this famous writer in the history of capitalism, and while we were talking, Neil asked me, Ivan, tell me, do you own an apartment in Kiev? I said, no, I don't own any property in Kiev because my earnings wouldn't allow me to take a mortgage or buy anything like apartment or a house or anything in the real estate market. And then Neil said, Iman, this is the direct result of how your oligarchs run the economy. If you don't have your own private apartment, blame the oligarchs. That was a conversation with Neil Ferguson, and he's a great writer. I mean, he works at Stanford University, where he teaches history of financial policies and history of the financial markets, and he's great in researching how the financial markets in Europe and the United States operated throughout the centuries. He knows lots of stuff about what is an infrastructure of opportunities in a capitalistic society, in a truly capitalistic society, where there is no more dilemma between stakeholder capitalism and shareholder capitalism, where people just work the jobs that they like, earn money they need, and enjoy life in a proper, sustainable way, where there is not much inequality. I mean, I probably none of the countries around the world succeeded in diminishing inequality to the zero level, but you can do a lot to make life and business scene and labor market more equal to what people are looking for and what they're able to adjust to. You still need to understand what kind of dreams people have, and those dreams here in Ukraine have a lot to do with becoming a country and economy with a big share of middle income, middle class Ukrainians who are responsible voters, responsible citizens, responsible residents of their cities, villages, and towns, who take care of their communities and can contribute to the country's economic and political well-being, and social well-being, and cultural well-being. The culture, also very important. The post-Soviet capitalism wouldn't allow Ukraine to have a developed national culture. I mean, it wasn't supportive of the Ukrainian language, it wasn't supportive of the Ukrainian books, it wasn't supportive of the Ukrainian narratives in the history of philosophy or art research, right? So if you wanted to be a scientist in Ukraine within the post-Soviet capitalist model, you didn't have any financial support for your plan, for your academic plan. You were an outsider to the system where oligarchs wanted to rule how things are and how things are developing in this country. They were pressuring the Ukrainian culture, and that was a problem, because in the East we have this horrible neighbor, which is the Russian Federation, who used to export its culture to Ukraine. So we had these huge Russian cultural influences with language and religion and other things that we had to absorb. We had no other choice, no other option. We had to live with these Russian influences, and oligarchs and post-Soviet capitalists were happy with this. I mean, they still dreamt of capitalizing on bilateral economic ties with the Russian Federation, with trade and investment in the Russian Federation. Many billionaires in Ukraine had their investments in Russia. Rinat Akhmetov used to own assets in Russia. Petro Poroshenko used to own assets in Russia, and many others too. And some Russian oligarchs and business people came here, bought assets like in energy sector and owned them. And they did the banking, they did energy, they did finance, they were buying Ukrainian bonds from the government through intermediaries that they also might own. That's how it worked, and we couldn't really escape from this and break away from this vicious cycle of post-Soviet capitalism that is still like 19th century Britain, where you have to work long hours, don't have a vacation, sometimes you have to escape on your weekends to do work, and you don't get paid well, and you don't have many chances to succeed in life, and when you start having a family, you have a problem because you can't cover its financial needs. And many people of my generation who are millennials, they had to skip on choosing a family way of life. They can't afford having a family because you can't get a job that you would work and be all right financially if you have a family. So many people like me live single lives for the reason because it's the only economically sustainable way. I mean, you still is kind of able to cover your own financial needs, but if you have a kid, I have a kid. If you have a wife or a husband, it's close to impossible to live a happy life and earn good money. I mean, there is still, as I said, 5% of rich Ukrainians and like 5% more who are close to them. But all the other people used to live in poverty, which is not total poverty. poverty like what you have in some African countries where people go starving, but still a pretty low quality of life, which makes people mad, which makes them disappointed with the government, and sometimes they would vote for the pro-Russian parties who are promising that, things will go back to how the Soviet economy operated and things will become more equal and people will have more money, which is again is just Russian propaganda of the Soviet lifestyle that plays on people's nostalgia feeling. Many old people here in Ukraine dream of going back to the Soviet times when the economy was directly ruled by the government and no private property existed. So we went through these several crises where we didn't trust each other, we didn't trust the government, we didn't trust the oligarchs. We knew that just all those actors of the Ukrainian post-Soviet capitalism don't wish each other well. They're like in aggressive competition, but they all agree that things shouldn't be changing. The economy shouldn't get more equal, and the democracy should be like a toy in your hands that you can do anything with it, as it's flexible and it can absorb all kind of oligarchic and even criminal rules that you want to establish and want them to work in your best interests. That was a huge problem, and the problem also was that not many people do understand this. Though I've been writing about this extensively, explaining each point of my political views, how the economy should be organized, what's the ways and methods to build a proper society which would function in people's best interests, not oligarchs' best interests. I mean, oligarchs always had their way to suppress you, to make you silent, to make you unheard. If they own television channels, they make sure you never go to the television shows and people can't hear you. You can still, write stuff on Facebook or Twitter, but you can't get access to television because you're saying things that could bring risks to the fortunes of the richest Ukrainians, to the billionaires here in Ukraine. But I think they're also the group that could be blamed for that war is happening. If the oligarchs wouldn't behave the way they behaved, we wouldn't be having a war. We would be a rich, developed country and probably a member of the European Union and the Euro area by now, which would have a much better economic and business and investment environment with much less risks, and like the interest rates on our bonds would be much lower. The oligarchs were all right with high interest rates. They thought it's a good thing. They didn't care that people can't afford a loan, can't afford a mortgage, and small businesses can't take up as much money in debt and as they need. Oligarchs were standing behind this high interest rate environment, which was a huge risk for all of us. But that's how Ukrainian post-Soviet capitalism operated. So we need to go further. We need to change our country, change the labor market, change the energy market, the financial market, change our industry, do things digitally where it's needed and cybersecurity risks are counted. We have a lot of work expecting for us, and with all these major reconstruction programs that will be happening after the war is over, after we're gonna win it, we should add to our reconstruction efforts the major economic and political reforms, so many more Ukrainians would be able to succeed in life, and billionaires and millionaires and oligarchs wouldn't have a final say of how people live. All Ukrainians, they are proud citizens of their country, and we're proud of our nation, and we do not want to listen to what oligarchs expect of us and what kind of rules they prescribe to us. We're going to have free, happy, rich life, exactly what we and our army is fighting for in the war against the Russian Federation that started on February 24th. Let's succeed in life. Let's be happy. Glory to Ukraine. We deserve much better life than we used to have.